more regulation than what we would probably even have the manpower to regulate. I mean, even look at being able to purchase a weapon and how hard, but how easy that is all in the same breath, right? And the idea that somebody has a mental illness or something, and can we track it, and so on and so forth. Um, but even more so, I think like the old people claim, the senior citizens and their ability to vote for Medicaid, Medicare, whatever, Social Security, and they're part of a minority group, yes, but they've earned that right. They've earned that right to continue voting in America. They've paid their taxes, they've paid their dues. It's time for them to be able to relax. But also, with that stringent, is their legacy, their grandchildren. They still have properties, they still pay taxes into the system. They're still uh, like doing their civic duty to whatever degree that is. I don't think you can hardline that and be like, okay, well, once you pass the age of 75, like we don't want to know what you have to say anymore, right? Even though you're the most experienced people here, you have the wisdom of how many generations, and you've created even more generations, and you want nothing more but the best for your children. And I think that their vote should count even more in terms of the value of wisdom and experience and knowledge they've been through. They're 75 years old. That's a lot of different American history that they've seen and come through, and I have a strong value in that. So I don't know if we want to like chastise that all the way and be like, "Yeah, you're just old."
Well, here's the thing on that. There's a very easy solution, and it's Ryan stops being mean. But it's not just Ryan stops being mean, it's everyone stops being mean. And I mean this on every side imaginable. I don't believe in the two party left, right, what I believe everybody. And I explain this, I say this because if 80% of people aren't voting, that means the old people, their children and grandchildren aren't participating. That's what should be balancing it out. If we were having voter engagement from 18 on up, we would have a nice spread. But unfortunately, the vote is largely younger voters aren't participating, and so it skews heavy. So the solution really, I think, is what Ryan would like is more voter engagement, more voter education, more all of this.
But
And so I
do you,
think,
oh,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. Well, I was
I
gonna say,
think
do you
generally,
want people to vote who don't even care to go vote? Do you want them engaging in something that they actually don't care to do? Right? Like I look at it just the same as for instance, if you help a friend out and you hook them up with an interview for a job, and you're like, bro, all right, I got you set up. This person said just to email them, and they'd love to talk to you, so on and so forth. And your friend never emails that person. They never do go and engage with it. And it was like the perfect opportunity for them, and they just didn't even go through with it. Like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a drink. But if your friend doesn't even go out of their way to email that person to get the interview set up, do you want them even taking on that interview anyways? Right? Like the same with people who are too lazy to vote, or don't care enough to vote, or don't want to vote, or don't like the government system. Do you want those people really going and casting their opinion out if they're not willing to take the time to educate themselves? They don't care enough about the voting system to do it. They don't care enough about America to be willing to cast their opinion to it. They don't care enough about the left right talking points or what's important. I like, do you want them voting if they don't care enough to even get up and go?
well, so there's sort of two pieces of this, right? I'm a systems engineer at my heart. I say, figure out what the thing is. And if I want a different outcome, how do I engineer to that solution?
Hmm.
I think the problem is we have massive disengagement from voters. And there's a lot of good angles about that being a problem. I don't want people who aren't engaged to participate. I want everyone to be engaged. And so if you
Hmm.
take a look at why people aren't engaged, it's divisive rhetoric. It's feeling like their vote doesn't matter. It's feeling like a lot of the reason, and I hope this message gets heard and loud and clear across all of the liberal internet dim. Not that it's, we'll see how far it goes, but a lot of conservatives are pissed at Trump. The idea that you're saying, well, you guys voted for Trump, most of us are pissed about that. No one really liked him. He was a Democrat for a long time before he ended up flipping over. And it's not even, look, I don't mind a Democrat. I don't mind a libertarian. I do mind a flat earther. They make a point once in a while. It's only on accident. But when we're thinking about actual voter engagement, right? If we're thinking
Hmm.
Athenian democracy, everybody gets a voice. The question is, Why are they not engaged? And I think that that's a broader discussion. But again, if you don't think your vote matters, if you're tired, you don't want to be involved with something because it's just people shrieking at each other. And here's the other thing, and Ryan, you're going to like this one, I think. If people are working so damn hard just to make ends meet that they're so sprawled out that they can't spare the bandwidth to deal with it, that's a problem too. We need to make sure that the voting base actually can participate. If they're too busy stuck in a rat race, like they can't meaningfully engage. Ryan, would you agree with me on that one?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that people who are struggling to get by day to day, they are less likely to engage with the political process because they mean they're making sure they're worrying about like how they're going to feed their kids and pay for their health care and stuff. Obviously, yeah, of course, I agree with that. I also agree with another point you made about feeling like people feeling like their vote doesn't matter. And I thought it was interesting you brought that up because earlier you were pointing to my vitriol or in the vitriol by and large as like one example of something that pushes people away from political involvement. But something you did tonight was you push on this idea that this election must have been influenced in some shady way, because why would people vote for this thing that you thought would be insane for them to vote for? So
That's
you're
not my
kind of
argument.
pushing this narrative that the voting is rigged, right? And that you were suggesting that the voting perhaps is not fair and people aren't being represented. Well, I think that if what's the phrase, too big to rig? I think if more people were engaged, more people were voting, it might be harder for that to even make those claims in the first place. But I also think that like pushing those narratives without really strong evidence and kind of convincing people that like their votes don't matter in the first place, I think that's another form of mild disenfranchisement that we should be engaging with. And I mean, I think that the Republicans and Trump specifically, with all the lies about the 2020 election, I think they did a number on trust in our institutions, and now they're doing a number on trust in those institutions in a different way by making those institutions even less trustworthy than they ever were. But that's a whole different conversation.
We would both agree that voting should be transparent and accurately counted, and we should follow up right. So here's Ryan. Here's a specific challenge to you. At least anytime you're talking to me, if you think that there's treachery on one side and it's on the other side as well, I think we should be at no treachery. There's no party that's immune. There's no group that we can say, well, they can cheat and the other side can't. So all that just to say, I wouldn't be happy if I mean the other thing is there is a lot of proof on this. I'm just not ready for that. I didn't prep for this. If you want examples of ballot stuffing, if you want all this other stuff, there is proof. But a part of the problem, going back to the misinformation, disinformation, all of that, is there's just this deluge of filth everywhere. So for anybody trying to actually parse through it, it becomes a fool's errand, and I think that's driving some disengagement. Surely.
Yeah, I'll move to the questions and maybe the panel. I just wanted to engage with you on those, Joshua, just because I like heard some things and I'm like, but I'll go ahead and move to the questions. Welcome, Jen, with your new membership, darling. We love having you here. Neo Starling sending in the maters just to say hello to everyone. Tom says, how idiotic to say old people have no stake. They have kids, friends, love of country, but I'm given my whole life to the country. Now I'm so old, so I shouldn't have a say. Only word for this view is idiotic. And Joshua, I believe that's to you.
Oh, I mean, there's an oversimplification there, and maybe we'll bait Tom into doing more and more donations to clarify. But it's you should have the same vote. Like the real prescription, right? Josh is king for a day. He gets to win the hearts and minds. It's not just he's a tyrant, but we actually win people over on things. Is their children and grandchildren should vote as well. The problem fundamentally, to point to a specific iceberg, is Social Security and Medicare are both they're going to hit, and it's going to be real ugly, and it's going to be a bloodbath. And if the older voters really gave a shit about their kids and their grandkids, they wouldn't be voting this way. And so the ideal is the kids and the grandkids are voting and participating. We're getting a balanced and even perspective on it. But the other thing is, my argument wasn't that the old people have no stake, it's that they have less of a stake. They have less of their lifetime to be here. And more importantly, the consequences for what they're doing will not be visited on their own heads. So no matter how much they love their children, their grandchildren, the world behind them, it's just not an actual penalty they'll be paying the price for.
But you are voting, you're taking it from as if they were only voting in one direction. But if you're saying, well, if they vote this way, it's in their disinterest, but you're removing their option to vote the other way altogether.
Historically, any politician that even mentions the problems that we have with those programs is not going to win an election. It's maybe it's a flaw in the way our election process works, but that is a radioactive topic for anyone to talk. This has been documented at least for 20 years. And this is a problem that just keeps compounding and getting bigger. A lot of the national debt is to those programs. And I'm not saying we shouldn't fund them, but fundamentally, it's just as simple as that group, and it's a rolling target. It's not just the old people today, but take your 75-year-old voter 20 years ago. They're not here anymore, and they voted to, part of their vote was to keep things going as the status quo, even though it's going to blow up later. So if we take a look at just make it easy, the last 20 years of voting data, they're not voting in the interest of their children and grandchildren.
But they're voting.
Yeah.
You're saying that they're only voting one way, but you're claiming that in order to prevent them from voting one direction, you want to remove their vote altogether, but that's still their vote.
Also, I want to add for 1 second. Like, I think the suggestion that they're not voting in the interest of their grandchildren, their children, etc., like, and their communities. I don't know this is true. I think they certainly they might perceive that that's what they're doing. I think a lot of old people believe that they are voting for what's they believe is best for the country, best for their family, best for their kids. Yeah, I don't think this is substantiated just because, you know, I'll yield that, like, there are funding issues with Medicare and with Social Security. These are problems, but it feels like the solution isn't disenfranchising the people who depend on these things. It's finding a better way to fund them. You know, maybe we can look at the billionaires who are paying a very tiny percentage of their income compared to what they could be providing. That might be one way to deal with this, and I wish more old people were on board with that. But, you know,
well, let me poke you in the ribs on this one, Ryan. Let's say your worldview is right, and I'm another mind open to being changed here. If you'll agree with me for the sake of argument, you know, I can fact check this and everything, that Social Security and Medicare are collapsing and have been collapsing for the last 20 years. They're not voting for their posterity. They're not engaging with that. And so would you, if I think we'd agree it'd be better if the posterity was voting and participating as well. But all evidence indicates they're voting for, we don't care if our children have health care in retirement or if they have Social Security income. And so they're saying, I'm going to bury my head in the sand on this issue. And this has been an issue for 20 years or more. So how do we reconcile that?
I mean, it's a good question. I'll yield that. In fact, I do believe there are funding issues that are downstream of the reality of, like, how we handle Medicare and Social Security. I agree with that, but maybe the word collapsing and the disaster. These are things that I'm not quite as sold on. That these are so impending, or these are, you know, we're just a few years away from disaster. I just don't buy that. But, like, I mean, again, like, these are hard conversations and hard policy decisions. They're gonna have to be made at some point as we face consequences. And I mean, just saying that because people vote to make sure that they have the means to survive means that they're not also voting for having a country that their children can also thrive in. I just don't see these things as inherently mutually exclusive. I think that there are probably solutions that, you know, just because I can't come up with them on the fly right now. I'm not a lawmaker, you know. Maybe we should start looking at what people who are our lawmakers are proposing with regards to this, and see if we
real quick. Are you a U.S. citizen?
Damn right I am.
If you run for any office, I'll be happy to help you.
I won't do it, but I appreciate that.
Right. I don't care what side people are on. I care about people that actually care about the populace. I dropped in chat also a Time article. I don't know which media you find acceptable and authoritative or not.
Time is fine.
But it's something to actually dig into on it. And I think that, again, this goes back to the vitriol and the rhetoric. I think if we could have sat down collectively as a society 20 years ago and had a discussion about this in a sensible way, you know, what your retirement, what my retirement, what Sarah's retirement is going to look like, that'd be a lot better. And so that's a part of why, again, I was excited to have this conversation with you, because I do think more than many, you can be engaged with reasonably, and I appreciate you meeting me there on that one.
Fair enough. Dwight asks, what do panelists think is correct minimal age to vote, and how did you come up with said age?
I guess personally, I mean, I think we got to start somewhere, and I think it's reasonable to associate it with like the age that people become adults. But personally, I'm open to like some sort of like I've actually talked about this on this panel before, like allowing 17-year-olds to vote potentially. And when I brought that up, I think to Andrew Wilson was on here, and he said that, oh well, wouldn't you have to also lower the age of consent or something, which is an absolutely bizarre and ridiculous conclusion to draw from that. Those are not the same thing at all. But I think that getting people to vote early when they are perhaps have more time to do so, when they're not like just gone off to college, and they're like still involved in their home, they're still probably talking about politics with their family, they're still probably taking civics classes in high school, for example. If they vote for the first time at that point, they are more likely to vote in the next election. Voting is something that once you start doing it, you're more likely to do it in the future. And it seems that 18 is perhaps possibly one of the worst times to start voting, just because of all the things that are going on. People are less likely to vote when they're 18. So I'm actually open to expanding that. And a lot of 17-year-olds work jobs, pay taxes, etc. I don't know. I'm not opposed to allowing that. So I don't know. We see, how did I come up with it? It's going to be arbitrary at the end of the day. We have to pick something, and
Doesn't have to be arbitrary. I'll live with 18. Anything any lower, I can't live with. I would be fine with going all the way to 25 under the argument people are familiar with, which is when the brain develops. Democrats in California, I believe, have lobbied for going as low as 16, and I think the answer is generally a lot of folks, younger people are generally an easier voter base to manipulate. And so that's the concern that I would have. There's a lot of folks that have ideas in their younger years that later on they become disabused of. And so I don't know that going to 17, 17 is not a huge leap. I don't know, going like 16, 15, 14, we go down. Yeah. I agree with you, Ryan. The mirroring that with the age of consent, I think, is weird, real weird. But I think 18 is fine. And I think that should be, if we say you're an adult at 18, then you can vote, you can have a gun, you can drink a beer. Like, those are all part of the same group to me. So if we're saying 18, I think that's a fine line. I wouldn't want it any younger. And again, the argument for 25 would be that's when basically we're better at reasoning, and any younger and we're more manipulatable.
I would just add one thing. I actually agree that you're probably more manipulatable at 17, 16, etc. But I think the people who are most likely to be manipulating you to vote in a certain way at that age are probably going to be your family. People tend to register to vote with the political party of their parents. And I think so they're probably also going to go to the voting booth with their parents. They're going to be listening to their parents talk about politics. They're probably going to vote alongside their parents, more so than just AOC or someone who they saw tweeting. Although I mean, I guess it's possible to sway them as well. But
I could see
the
that.
idea is
That
not the idea is
actually-
not about the idea is not about getting them to vote a specific way as much as getting them started in the habit of voting so that they continue to be an engaged member of society in their older age.
That makes sense.
I think the youngsters are very manipulatable. Juul, they did a massive campaign with their vaping with targeting teenagers, and now we've got a whole generation of kids that are addicted to nicotine. If Ryan's argument is that kids are going to do what their parents say when they're teenagers, I think that one's a little odd, but maybe I'm less in touch with the kids these days. But I also think, engage in the process and understanding it's really important. Like, if we had better civics education in high school, I think if we did the education ahead of it, I think we could go a little lower. Maybe. I still don't like it, but the manipulation machine is what I'm afraid of, not whatever their parents are going to say or do.
Fair enough. Welcome, Mr. Muckster, for your membership here. Tom Carpenter sending the war tax for the Mater Nation. Thank you so kindly. Appreciate you. Tom also says, and there's the point. When you have various criteria filters, who sets the criteria? If Ryan does it, Joshua would be filtered out and vice versa. Don't thinking we want that.
I would like to say, to be clear, I would not disenfranchise Josh. I would not disenfranchise Republicans in general. In fact, I want to give them health care. I want them to have the right to vote. I want them to have health care. I want them to have welfare and all these programs that those red rural states largely depend on. So yeah, I'm not that guy, but I agree with the sentiment that, like, as we start putting these filters up, people are often of the perception that they are not going to be a victim of those filters until they are.
Well, and I'm going to join arms with Ryan here. We're working on singing Kumbaya together better. I wouldn't want him disenfranchised. I like the fact that he cares and he's engaged. We can arrive at a wide variety of different opinions. He's even corrected me on stats, and I'm fine with that. I believe that there's empirical truth out there, and in reasoned discussion, we can have that come out. I do wish he'd stop being mean, and it's not just because it's a character flaw and I'm saying Ryan's a bad guy. I think Ryan's a good guy. Ryan's going out on the internet. He's saying his piece. He's getting people engaged. He's talking about things. He's not just ranting and screeding. He's actually saying, well, this is where I come to this. And he does have a little bit of this wanting to be Santa and give everybody health care. And we haven't figured out the economics on that. And that's sort of where I start having a problem. But fundamentally, I don't think it's about filtering people out as much as it is making sure that the system's accurately reflecting I mean that it's we've got an educated voter base that is making good policy for the long-term health of the country and in ensuring individual rights, which is a nightmare to dance those two, but that's where I end up on it.
I just want to add, shut up, Four Eyes, enjoy your health insurance.
I got taxed for it.
Alexander says, by Joshua's standard, men shouldn't be allowed to vote on abortion since the people who die in childbirth are 100% women. Seems like a crap system. By that standard, only elderly get to vote on Social Security.
I mean, that's a logically incoherent thing to say. The fact of the matter is, now there's this idea that women, children are the property of women. That's roughly how U.S. law has been set out. That's roughly how the family courts work. Fact of the matter is, the child is 50% the father's DNA, and women are given complete control over whether or not. I mean, here's what's really stupid about this, Alex. What's really stupid about the thing that you said, and I'm trying to be nice, but you've really hit on a nerve here, and it deserves to be called out for stupid. Women exclusively get to decide if they want to kill the kid or not. Exclusively. There's no say that the men have. So even though we can vote, we get no say in that.
Well, I think
That's
that the
that's
axis he's kind of taking here is more about your idea that, like, men are the ones who die in the wars. So those people are the most impacted by that. And similarly, women are the most impacted by abortion restrictions because they are the ones, I believe men and women are different. I think women have wombs. Children grow in wombs, so that's the basis by which I believe abortion should be legal, because these people are obligated to grow that child in their womb, and they should have the opportunity to end that process if they choose. But I think, I mean, what he's arguing, it seems logically coherent with, if you're by your standard that if men are the ones who are primarily affected by war, that men should be the ones who should vote for whether or not we go to war. And he's saying women are the ones primarily affected by pregnancy and abortion. And so by that standard, women should be the ones who vote on that issue, or by only elderly people would vote on Social Security. I don't think it's incoherent. I think it's kind of logically sound, actually.
No, it's an oversimplification, and it starts by mischaracterizing what I said. The fact of the matter is, I didn't say because men are the only people that die in war that they should be the only ones to vote in war. I pointed to a concern. I didn't necessarily. So again, I'm saying I don't think that's fair and reasonable, and there should be an accommodation for that. Mr. Rin or Ren or whatever it is saying flat out that there should be no allowing for the vote. I wasn't even going that far with it, so he's not flipping my argument; he's reinventing it.
Well, I mean, even at that, parents should be the only ones who vote on educational programs. I mean, you could. I see what you're saying by the draft concept, like, but that's because of the caveat that only men go to war and die, right? So then it's like, okay, well, then parents are the only ones who have any children in the education system, so therefore, only parents should be able to vote on.
Was
Oh
it? Did we
no,
lose
Sarah!
just Sarah? Okay,
We lost
good.
Sarah.
It's not me. It's not my fault. That's good.
No, I saw. I was doing my head bob. You were doing your head bob.
Yeah. We
I
formed a
mean, the
mutiny
thing is,
here. We've taken over Sarah's channel. So
I didn't say only men die. People love putting words into my mouth I didn't say, so that way they can make the argument. It's not exclusively men. It's women too. It's and yeah. And the other thing is to jump on what Sarah's saying. Like, I'm surprised this didn't come up in our chat, but it did here now. I I find voting for the school board, for example, I don't have any kids that go to the school district. I do pay a school tax, but why the hell should I have a say in who gets elected there or who's involved? Because I don't have actually any skin in the game. And I think it might even be more interesting to say per student, you get 1 vote per kid, right? You got 10 kids, you get 10 votes. I don't know. And I do think that a part of what might be more useful than these massive votes where everybody in a state votes on a couple of issues, these smaller ones. And Ryan, I think you were probably leaning towards this with the illegal immigrants. My starting point is if they're an illegal immigrant, they should leave. But ignoring that argument, just setting that to the side, if people are living in a community and they're picking trash day, the people in that community should be picking what the trash day is because it doesn't matter to anyone else. I didn't hear you if you said that.
Oh, sorry. I was thanking Mackenzie for the gifted membership in my chat. But
thank you, Mackenzie, for the gifted membership in Ryan's chat.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's skip to the next super chat. Oh wait, we can't.
Yeah. Well, we have we technically, if you click the starred section of the side chat, we can actually see.
Wow! I'm seeing all of this stuff here. Oh my goodness, starred.
So
okay. Yes, Muckster, Tom. What's the criteria? Okay.
I think the next one would be.
I am supreme leader.
Yeah. So Kokomo becomes supreme leader. Thank you, Kokomo.
All right. I'd like to hear his platform. I'd like to hear his platform.
Yeah,
I like the donation. I think only women and what the.
Tom says only women. And Tom Carpenter for $9.99 says, I think only women and bald men should be allowed to vote. Perhaps I should shave my head then, if that's the only way. And thank you, Michelle, for that $2 as well.
I am way overdue for a haircut, and I don't think I'd go all the way to bald, but to vote maybe. All right, Jason Reeves, $4.99. I honestly think that only I like this guy. I honestly think that only property owners should vote because it's easy to vote and spend others' money. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you a question about this one, but develop a little bit, with your consent, of course.
My consent.
So there is a problem with saying the people that aren't putting money into the pot get to make the vote. Now, full disclosure, I've done pretty well for myself at different stages of my career. The first year I did really well. I had to write the IRS a check for $53,742. And that hurt. Because my first job was making $4.75 an hour, and I'd taken a lot of risk and worked really hard to get there. So my question she's back. We kept going through the super chats without you. See how collaborative we are? He even helped me. But yeah, so I mean, how do you make sense of the folks that aren't paying for it? And I get everybody, like there's a conflict there. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, everyone is impacted by what goes on in a local community, right? Like people are impacted by all the policies. People are, they are subject to the laws. They can be arrested, detained, perhaps forced to be pregnant. They can, like, there are so many different things. Like we can talk about how there might be particular things that they aren't as directly affected by. But I mean, that doesn't seem to be how we approach decision making in our democracy. We would have to do some pretty radical reform to try to get I'm just imagining all the infrastructure to determine just how directly people are affected by every single policy that we could vote on. I mean, it might be interesting data to explore, but I don't know if we should start evaluating just how much of a vote people have over specific things because of that. I'm just not sure it's practical or even desirable.
Well, part of the problem though is, let's say you have and this is a complete vacuum example, just going to illustrate the point. Let's say you have a town where there's 10 people who own homes and there's 90 homeless people. Everybody gets an equal vote. Everybody gets together, they vote, and they say, should we redistribute property? And then the homeless people go 100%. And then the people that have their homes say no, and just assume they're paid off, it's their property, right? There's a fracture there where basically through the vote, the property owners are getting mugged. So do you have any thoughts on how to mitigate that? Do you at least acknowledge it might be a bit of a problem? I agree we shouldn't have kings and serfs, but
Yeah, I mean, if we have a situation where 90% of the population in an area is homeless, that sounds like a policy failure to me in the first place. And perhaps we should hear these people's concerns, and they should be able to vote for specific policies that might impact their likelihood of becoming homeless in the first place. It sounds like a policy failure, not like a moral failing on those people. So I don't view it as necessarily mugging that they would have a voice over what goes on in that area, because again, they reached the point of being homeless somehow. I guess if we're suggesting they all like decided to be homeless, they're all laying around all day, playing video games or on like whatever TVs and video game consoles have been thrown out by the 10% that are they're trying to vote alongside. I guess it's like logically possible. I can imagine a situation where it's kind of weird for those people to have a voice, but yeah, in reality, I view this kind of severe disproportionate poverty as a policy failure, and it's important to hear these people's concerns and why they're in that situation in the first place. And again, that like voting is one way to manage that.
I think you're very consistent in your worldview. I admire that about you. I don't agree, obviously, but I do think you're consistent, and it's nice when people are consistent.
Kokomo says, no one gets
Sarah,
to
wrong
vote.
mic, I think.
Oh, thank you. Oh shit, my thing went out.
We've been going through the chats while you were gone, stepping up.
Oh yeah, we read that one, and but we can keep moving through. But we read up until Jason Reeves. We were talking about Jason Reeves' 499 one just now, with the property owners. But you should still run through them a little bit. But we don't have to cover that ground again. In fact, I can go pee while you do that.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, my mic is warming back up. I apologize. The power went out earlier today twice, and I didn't even think to give the warning. Let me see. The mic should be able to. Is that coming in better?
That's much better.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for letting me know. Kokomo says, no one gets to vote. I will be supreme leader indefinitely. Absolutely. And Tom says, I think only women and bald men should be allowed to vote. Yes, Tom, I concur. I think that would be the best. And this is where you left off here on Jason? Or
yeah, we were just talking about that one.
Okay, I honestly think only property owners should vote because it's too easy to vote to spend others' money. I can concur with that. If somebody came out and said, and I know you guys had already gone through this conversation, but I could agree that if somebody came and said only property owners be allowed to vote, I am all for it. I would put my stamp of approval on it, because then you do have a vested interest in your property, your land, a piece of the pie, and you're here. Right. And you're showing that with your actions. So I would totally put a seal of approval on that. And of course, Jason puts my second favorite color up on the screen with the big 50. Can I get tomatoes in the chat from everyone to say thank you, Jason, for completing the goal? Much love to you. I'm sure Mama's going to be getting in the chat soon, Jason, so you'll be able to have fun. And Eli Nix is backstage, one of Mama's favorites too. So somebody needs to call out Mama. Alexander says, that was your concern. My apologies. Your argument was about who should be excluded from the vote. And I get you're not saying no now, but based on your argument, this is the conclusion. And I believe this was referring to entered here.
Yeah, and this is a part of why I like these discussions, is you can engage with it. Sometimes, our brains are really funny. For a couple of years, I worked as a private investigator, and I always took notes, and our minds just remember things horrible. The worst type of testimony you can get is eyewitness. So in a discussion like this, I really like re-engaging and making sure that we're on the same page about things. I really try to not misunderstand anybody, but Mr. Wren, thank you for catching up on that one. It's nice to be acknowledged for what I said and not what you thought I said.
Love, 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 love all the way around. Okay, I've got a full panel backstage, or not full panel, but I've got a panel backstage ready to come and play. Gentlemen, let's have some fun. All right.
Oh.
Thank you so much to the gentleman for jumping on the panel. And I do apologize for holding you back there hostage for quite a while. I, of course, had my own thoughts to hand over to Joshua and Ryan, and then, of course, the super chats, and I did lose track of time. But I have set off the gauntlet. If you're watching over on the tomato side, start making your way over to the gauntlet. Otherwise, I'm going to get ready to set up the raid here shortly, and we're going to all head over there. And I'll go ahead and ask this next question that came up. UPS fund to keep your roadcaster powered up with the power outages. Thank you so much. Yeah, we have strong winds going on right now, and it just thank God I live on a good grid because it just goes out for a second and comes back on. But I'm sure the neighbors across the street are actually still powerless for some weird reason. But Eli, I've missed you so much. And I'm so grateful that you've been able to finally make your way back to the panel, to your home, your favorite home to be, the place you claim is your channel. And since it is your channel, sir, I would like you to go ahead and dive in with your first thoughts to the panel.
Sure. Well, as far as the prompt goes, do adults have the right to vote? I think generally yes, technically no, as was brought up in the debate. However, whether or not that should be the case, I think is part of the greater debate. What I would ask, especially to Ryan, who I believe does believe that all adults should have the right to vote. Let me put to you like a hypothetical. Let's say you have a marketing company, right? And up at the top, the people who make the company work are skilled marketers. Some may be on the lower end of that, but they've had the proper education, years of college, master's degrees, whatever. And they decided they're going to take a democratic vote of who becomes the CEO. And then you've also got a janitor on the first floor who cleans the toilets, didn't graduate high school, and he's directly affected by everything that happens in the company, because if the company goes under, he loses his job. However, he doesn't know the first thing about marketing, doesn't know what goes on behind the closed doors of the board meetings, and ultimately doesn't know shit from Shinola about which one of the CEOs would be the better candidate. So, in your opinion, do you think that janitor should have the right to come into not right, but that they should allow that janitor to come into the board meeting and cast a vote on who becomes the CEO of that company?
Yeah. So interestingly, what you're asking me about is a form of what I think we'd often call like market socialism. So you're talking about a form of socialism here, where corporations are kind of like co-ops and function as internal democracies. And I am open to a world where like the janitor or whatever lower rung people we have some voice in the company. I don't know exactly what that needs to look like. I'm okay with having boards that vote for things, just like we have Congress votes on specific things that the every citizen doesn't necessarily vote on. But I'm open to structures where people who dedicate their lives to a particular company have some voice in that company. Absolutely, yeah.
So, well, specifically, the question was for this marketing firm. Let's say you're one of the people that has a degree in marketing. You're one of the small percentage of people on the ninth floor who get a vote in who becomes the CEO. But since they all made a collective decision to say, "Hey, we're going to do this by democracy," they're also asking you, "Do you think we should allow this janitor to come up and make a vote on who becomes the CEO?" Specifically to that decision, do you think that janitor should have a say in the realm of a marketing company?
Again, like I'm open to a system where we have some representatives in there who might be selected by the people in that company. I'm open to companies experimenting with this stuff.
I guess it's kind of a yes or no question, though.
I think it is just for people who are directly impacted by like these companies and by the democracy we live in to have a voice in that democracy. Absolutely.
So the answer would be yes.
Should he be in the marketing meeting, like in the board meeting?
Should
I
he
don't know about
cast
that.
a vote
Like
on
just
whether or not who
like
becomes
that, it sounds
CEO?
like the just to be clear.
Hold on.
It sounds like the comparison would be like should Eli be in Congress voting alongside our Congress people? No, probably not. But should he have a voice in who's representing him in Congress? Yeah, totally. So I think that's the difference.
Okay.
Eli, do you think the corporate business structure is comparable to representative democracy?
I think that the corporate business structure can be comparable to how to run anything that business-like, which are
You don't think it's more like a monarchy or autocracy? Like,
I'm gonna interrupt for just a second. My systems are all messed up. I'm gonna hop out and back in. Please behave while I'm gone. Thank you.
And while she's doing that, you should be donating. We want to see donations. I'm sorry, Eli. Go ahead.
Well, further to my point, in 2022, over 50% of Americans couldn't even name the three branches of government, you see. So this is why I brought up this hypothetical. It is a hypothetical and it is oddly specific and it doesn't translate a one-to-one. But what I'm saying is that I would say no. I think that yes, that janitor is directly affected. I think that he should have benefits and things from his hard work. However, I think that there is a certain criteria of people who put in the specific type of effort that would allow them to have a say in what goes on in a marketing firm about what makes a marketing firm a marketing firm. If you don't even understand the first thing about how that works, it's foolish to allow you to have a say in who should run it if you don't know who would be the best candidate, or you don't have any say in what it's like to work amongst that type of candidate. Now, for example, going back to a system where you would allow property owners, taxpayers, people invested in a community, you have people who have, skin in the game that would actually make a better choice for who would run that whole entire thing.
Well, I mean, I think as I said a few times, like throughout this, like this phrasing "skin in the game," it seems like you guys conflate skin in the game with like particular kinds of skin in the game, having very specific skin in the game. But I mean, if you are subject to the laws of a country or a district or whatever, then you do have skin in the game. You are susceptible.
it seems like
to
you only
the
mean
rules and
monetary profit. Like that's what skin in the game
Why-
means. As though a poor person who policies are going to adversely affect far worse than someone who's rich enough to not give a shit about anything,
I think
right? Like they have a lot of skin in the game.
you can be poor and have skin in the game too.
And allow me, you could still own land. Allow me, if you don't mind, I'm officially going to shut down the tomato side and we're all going to be automatically directed over to the gauntlet. If you don't want to catch the raid, I've dropped the link into the chat, but tomato side is shutting down as of now. All right.
Let me put up
I think
one more.
Sorry, just to what Sarah just said. I think that's exactly what we're pushing back on. Is this equivalency of skin in the game with necessarily being like owning property? Like that's just not the
Possessions of
reality.
wealth mean
right?
you have more worth.
It doesn't have to be just owning property. It could be a variety of things that show that you contribute to society in a meaningful way, that you would actually desire the society that you contribute to be better off. And you actually have a general rudimentary understanding of how the society around you functions and operates, unlike, say, a homeless crackhead on the side of the road who managed to get a photo ID and then goes and makes a vote, Say yes.
This is why I like to think of voting as a right,
Non-governmental
because rights
employees,
don't
right?
care about those things.
Well, I
Sorry,
mean,
Sasquatch,
the
go
fact
ahead.
of the matter is, even if a taxpayer, like, here's the thing, I do think it should be limited to taxpayers. But the fact of the matter is, if you pay $1 in tax, you're a taxpayer. It's less to me about what the amount of the money is, right? Additive effigy, whatever the hell your name is. Like, it's not about they have to be wealthy, but they have to have some stake in what's happening, some ownership in it. The skin in the game could be property. That's an instant skin in the game. But Ryan points out to a very valid point, right? If you're subject to the laws, you have some stake in what's going on. And I think that's more stake in what's going on than skin in the game, but both are important.
They're both important. It's not just skin in the game. It's also having a rudimentary knowledge of what it takes for your community to function and making sure that, that knowledge or that investment actually makes a difference. When we allow everybody to vote and you have uninformed voters canceling out informed voters, this is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. Again, what have you had for another?
These are all arbitrary metrics, though. Like at the end of the day, like what there are specific things that I could say as a lefty that you guys would be like, that's completely not real information, right? There are things that,
Let's hear it.
and vice versa, that we could both go.
No, let's hear it.
No, the point being is that a lot, if we start using tests and things like that, all these different kind of metrics, it really just comes down to who writes them, because we're all going to be biased on that. This is why everyone should be allowed it, and this is why I think voting is a right, because rights don't give a shit about that, and they belong to everyone, because the only metric for voting should be you being a citizen.
Well, imagine if there's and I'd imagine this is the case in this country, a large amount of people who only vote because a particular talking head, whether it be a politician, a celebrity, or an influencer, tells them to make that decision. And that's the only metric by which they make that vote. Is it really their vote, or did one politician, talking head, or influencer manage to net a large amount of votes?
You could say that about smart people too. That's the thing. You're never gonna win that argument with me, because in the way I believe in democracy, dumb people, stupid people, wrong people, malevolent people, they should all be able to vote.
Why?
Like in my worldview,
Why?
I think they should all be able to vote.
Why?
Because if they're citizens of the United States, they should have the right to vote, because I think voting is a right.
Well, okay, but I'm saying what? So first of all, when it comes to rights, that's a whole other debate. I mean, I believe that's a social construct that is just as arbitrary as you're saying. Everything that I'm saying is arbitrary. I don't think that. I think that if we make that something that is just a right for all, that's why you see these problems. If you look at it for, does it make for a better society, right? Why doesn't allowing everybody to vote make for a better society when the uninformed, maybe even people who have an anti-interest in the United States, have the ability?
Because the more people that vote, the more legitimate your government is.
Yeah.
How do you figure that?
Well, even at that, how do you determine who's eligible and who's not? How do you, because it's very subjective to what is the standard? What is the criteria? Is it hardlined across the board? Which is why I say, if somebody said only people with land can vote, I could be agreeable to that, because that incentivizes people to ground in and root in and want to have a vested interest. But also, like, it's a hard line criteria. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It has nothing to do with whether you're stupid, whether you're poor, whether you're a libtard. Like, it has nothing to do with anything else. And so that would chime in
what amount
on
of
that
land?
feature.
Can I start a business that sells a square foot by square foot piece of land to someone,
Yep.
and then they own a piece of land and can vote?
Yeah, you're still going to pay taxes on that acre. You still have a vested interest in the utilities, the water lines, the electricity. Fine. That's why I say you can.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, they could change it to where you have to own so much land that even middle class poor people couldn't, vote. They all of it could just be as arbitrary as anything.
Yeah, you make the most money on it too. Okay, so one of the ex-Enron founders, you guys know that big energy trading company that collapsed. Millennials and people older than millennials know Enron very well. But one of the executives is like the biggest landowner in Colorado after he ditched all of his stock. And so how isn't it the case that if I say my land gives me the right to vote, I'm not just playing that game, and I'm just, I'm basically feeding you like used dookie paper to tell you, like, well, this is what I want to do. It's like, I already know that. I'm not that dumb.
I have a question or an observation, I guess. If we're going to be cutting people out of the vote, I think government employees should be the first to go. I think if you work for the government, you shouldn't get a say in how much the government spends, where, when, how, and why, all of that. You're there to do a job, do the job. Don't vote yourself more work.
Couldn't agree. Hold the criteria for being able to hold a government job much higher. The same criteria that we would, give somebody the right to vote, or the ability to vote, rather.
I feel like I don't understand why we would want to disenfranchise our federal or state employees.
They're enfranchised by their employment in the system that we're voting for, not so much by their vote.
Sorry. Yeah, you can see this. So I lived just outside of DC for about 10 years. A lot of my friends are government contractors, part of that military industrial complex, lobbying, all of that. They very much act in their own self-interest. And it's like, the problem is, imagine you've got the citizenry and then you've got the government. When the government's able to vote alongside the citizenry and basically weigh in on what their paychecks are, what the policies are, who gets money. Like a really big example of where we've got a problem there too is you'll have folks that'll be in the military and they'll go work for government contractors, and they love all of this. And so you're going to see these employees all up and down Northern Virginia, Maryland, in DC, and that voter base helps set the policy for our military spending, our federal budget. And so they get a disproportionate benefit from saying use the government credit card. And then so that's the argument
just
on
to
it.
be clear, you're saying that like our military are the people who fight for our country, they shouldn't be allowed to vote in our country?
What I'm saying, I do a carve out for military, but unless you're in one of the 5 branches, if you're a contractor, if you're a Fed employee, right? The Fed employees, go to the Fed jobs subreddit and look at the entitlement all over that. These are not employees you would want under any condition, and they're sitting bitching about their entitlements. They're going to do as little work as possible until they get fired. We had the NSA actually pulled security clearances. It was Tulsi Gabbard pulled security clearances and fired a bunch of employees who were just basically having a private sex chat and doing that all day during work, right? There's not accountability there, and there should be some. And if they're able to manipulate the ballot box, it means less accountability, less transparency, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these people like definitionally have skin in the game, as it were, right? If we're gonna go back to that metric, I mean, these are people directly affected by what the government's doing. It seems very bizarre to want to disenfranchise. It would also make less people want to be federal employees, which seems like another bad thing, because I think we want people to want to work for the government. We want our government to run well. You seem to be cheering that on, but I mean, I'd say that like I don't know why you're cheering for my country to get worse. Like that's very bizarre.
So you assume that federal employees
government creates better conditions.
If I may pick on one in particular, Department of Energy. They've been single-handedly responsible for stunting Americans' nuclear power growth, which all of the climate-concerned folks should really love the idea of nuclear because it's a bunch of cheap, abundant electricity. But the Department of Energy, government employees, basically have puppy dogged this policy to the point, or puppy guarded this policy to the point where we don't have nuclear. Nuclear is a bad word, all this other stuff. So federal employees are some of the worst things that we have in our government, in particular because they say, I'm going to go work for the government and I'm going to impose my will on the universe. The Lauper Industries decision that came out with the Supreme Court a little while ago overturned the Chevron doctrine. The Chevron doctrine basically made every government agency, the EPA, the whoever else, its own autonomous judge, jury, and executioner. And so that got pushed back. But no, if you give federal employees unrestricted weight of the state and they're getting a paycheck from it, they don't have skin in the game. They are the game. They're playing the game. They're the ultimate benefactor of the game.
Where did Effigy go? Did he
Yes,
just randomly
erased him?
Land of beyond. He shall return in time.
Maybe the power grid hit him too. And if you don't mind, Ryan, I wanted to read these. Tom says, if you buy products that have taxes on them, you pay taxes too. Oh, and the goal. Yes, don't forget our wonderful goal. I would be disagreeable to paying taxes on purchases, and that being any type of voting privilege, only because anybody from outside the U.S. can come into the U.S. and purchase something and still be paying taxes on it when you buy it. I don't think it's a hard sell, and people don't. There's minimalists who don't like to buy a lot of stuff. I don't think that should be a telling tale for any of it, if that's where Tom was going with that. Jason says everyone wants a voice to do away with property taxes, and most just go with a flat tax on everyone. Would anybody be agreeable with a flat tax?
I'd love it.
No way. I'm one of the people that a flat tax would hurt. I'm one of the people a flat tax would hurt. I've been high income, I've been low income, I've done food service, while going to college. And I've done, like Tommy Boy in chat, I've done tech jobs. I can plan around a progressive tax. Or a graduated tax rate because I understand it and intuitively makes sense to me. Doesn't matter if I'm making $180,000 or $220,000 a year, or if I'm making 27. I can't plan around a flat tax because it's delusional to think that having more cash in your pocket makes you successful. You have to earn it, Jason Reeves. I hope I have.
Yeah, I would add that this idea of a flat tax, I mean, it sounds kind of like fair on paper until you like kind of think about it, and you're like, wait a minute, like, the same percentage to a billionaire has way less impact on their life than it does on, again, anyone on this panel realistically, right? Like they can
Federal employees
obviously
love this. Right.
I
Well,
don't
Another
care.
interesting.
I rate the tax.
I mean, yeah. Well, I guess they probably want their programs to be funded and stuff. I would agree. I would also want if I was in the government,
the
I would want
overhead-
programs that I'm working on to be
tax.
funded.
I think Sasquatch, did you want to add in on that?
I don't care how you run the tax. I just think that the average voter should be able to do their own taxes. And if that's not possible, either they shouldn't vote or the tax code should be simpler. Either way.
Well, and another interesting fact is, at least in the year 2022, almost 45% of the country didn't pay any federal tax. So, you've got 45% of the country making votes on tax laws that the other half of the country is going to pay. This is what we talk about with skin in the game.
Jason says, I've earned enough to boot you twice this week alone and not feel it. Fair enough, Jason.
Damn.
I love that kind of attitude. That's what I'm talking about.
So I live in California,
I'm sorry.
and what Ryan's talking about, where the policies will show where there's a problem. The funny thing is the homeless and the people like the guy that we literally have a guy down where I shop that walks out into traffic and like sometimes he has an axe or a bat and swings it at cars and does all kinds of shit. Well, when it's time to vote, they go ahead and go shower him up, give him a meal, and take him down to vote. And guess what? On basically every coastal city, they outnumber us. And we wonder why the laws in California keep getting more and more stupid and more fucked up.
And he'll probably be voting for
us.
And he'll probably be voting for the people that hand out free needles on the street too.
Yes, of course, because that's what they want. They literally they sit there. They'll be air punching. They pick that guy up. My partner in my farming, him and I. He stood in a guy in line behind in the store. This guy had a conversation with an invisible being about whether he should eat this unknown black thing on the floor that they didn't know what it was. And he's like, he knows that because he was having a conversation with the air. Funny part about this is that the air being, that was the one making sense. Like, don't eat the fucking thing off the floor, dude. The air being lost the fight, and that dude ate that thing. Like he ate it. Yeah. Didn't know what.
I think the main thing that we can focus on there is the implication that I guess presumably the Democrats are rounding up homeless people and sending them to the voting booths. And,
for the same idea that you just talked about,
because they
should have a voice.
People. What?
They should have a voice. It's the same thing you just said. That's a Democrat.
I agree. They should be able to vote. Yeah. Okay.
And they go around and vote them and load them up and make sure that they do. And California's policies keep getting worse and worse. And guess what? The homeless population keeps getting bigger and bigger. And the funny thing about all this is you said then the policies must be fucked up.
But they're fucked up because we're voting in the wrong things because
hang on. Well, potentially. I mean, or like it might be that these people who are becoming homeless were not actually being represented by the policies that were being put in place, and that's why they're becoming homeless.
They're voting for the Democrats. California's a Democrat dreamland.
Okay, but there's not like Democrats are also not, like Josh was saying, Republicans aren't a monolith, so Democrats are also not, right?
California.
Well, I guess the question is who goes and rallies up these people, offers them a meal and says, go vote this way, right?
And is that a bad thing?
I mean, we watched that here happen in Baltimore too. It was kind of embarrassing.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all to get those to help people vote. Like that seems like a good thing.
So you take no account for results that we keep getting dumber and dumber laws, and that California is becoming unlivable faster and faster. That doesn't mean one thing to you, that actually their welfare is now deteriorating because they're voting against it because of the stupidity of their voting.
what I'm saying is I'm not convinced that the causal factor for the problems in California is homeless people being able to vote. Like you might believe that. I would have to see some serious evidence of that.
I would
I have
argue
no reason to believe that personally. Just because you've seen homeless people vote, I think it's a good thing to have policies that help people go vote and exercise their civic duty. I think it's a good thing.
I would
Yeah,
argue
when they
it's not
outnumber
really.
us.
Listen, I would argue it's not really a democracy if there's a swath of people whose votes is determined by who gives them a plate. You know, at that point, it's kind of like my argument about the uninformed voter who's voting based solely off of what somebody tells them to do. You know, at what point is it no longer a democracy, but it's about netting votes? You know, you can do extraordinarily.
So, I mean, if Republicans and Democrats both have the
I-
opportunity to bring people to vote, then
Well, I know I'm not taking a side from one or the other. I'm saying it shouldn't be that way. I'm saying there should be a threshold of being informed, a threshold of participation
But
that would allow someone to vote.
But Eli, if I'm homeless, you guys maybe have already gone over this. Let's imagine I'm a homeless guy. I know my interest. I might not care or have an interest in all the same things that the politicians on the ballot just that year are talking about. And so just because I don't know what politicians that year are talking about, should it actually be the case that I don't get to vote because Eli doesn't like it and Eli's friends don't like it and Eli's friends' friends and their mom and dads don't like it? How is that true?
No, I just think
you
that
don't get to vote because you've proved that you're incapable of even taking care of your own life. Why should you have decisions on the gender?
I must interrupt, gentlemen.
I like that.
I must interrupt. Jason has sent not 100, not 200, but $250. And he says, enjoy a spa day or something, which I kind of really need that, honestly, at this point, Jason. You're so right. You knew it. And then he says, and let Duck have an early night for being smart. So Duck, it is the $100 boot, but I think it needs to be the $250 if anybody wants to counter to keep you on, because that was the notation. So Duck, we will allow you a full 2 minutes, sir, to plead your case to the audience. It has to be $250 to get you to stay on. If somebody does want to match that, they are more than welcome to. But you have 2 minutes to plead your case and say goodnight.
I'm here in my garage. You guys can see this is my new Lamborghini. I was a political science major. In my Lamborghini, I've got Democracy in America. I've got Rousseau. I got Locke somewhere too. If you guys want an expert on citizenship and voting, you should pay $250. And like, no offense to Sarah, like she's a gnar dude. And I mean that, but like, you know, she could use another 250 and that would keep me up here. Yeah. So that's my Ty Lopez impression. I will, or whatever his name is. I just want to say, thanks for having me up, Sarah, Ryan and Josh. Ryan and Josh, great to meet you guys, or great to meet you, Josh. Great to see you having your own sort of panel event. Ryan is one of the best people that you could have had that event with. He's an expert at what he does. And yeah, you seem like a really fierce debater, smart guy, Josh. So I'm excited to hopefully see you back on Tomato Shows. And yeah, I mean, I get it. If nobody's got $250, I'll be with you guys in spirit. Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you, Duck. I do apologize. That's 2 nights in a row for you, but we do enjoy having you here. I do promise you that. And you're always, I mean, we do have the no duck emoji for a reason, but your presence is always a blessing, and your spaz outs can still be fun, and we enjoy you. I value your opinion, even though it's crazy.
Thank
Other
you.
than that,
Appreciate
we will say good night to you, Duck,
All right.
and I wish you a wonderful rest of your evening. We'll see you in the chat.
Take care. We'll see you.
Bye.
I will add, I think sometimes when people perceive Duck as saying something crazy, if you listen a little bit closer and think about the context of what he's saying, he's actually making fun of other people on the panel. And the silly thing he's saying is mocking them, like in quite clever, interesting ways, I would argue. So there's something to that.
He's
Yeah,
like,
that's-
my partner Marcus that way.
I found that when you mute him and play Pink Floyd backwards, he starts to make a lot of sense too.
I like that.
I put him over a muted copy of Alice in Wonderland, and it works pretty well.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you again, Jason, and to the audience watching from the chat. Nothing but tomatoes. You failed me. I need more tomatoes for Jason. That's a big loot to boot, and I cherish it so kindly. And I will thoroughly maybe take myself for a pedicure or something somewhat reasonably pragmatic and practical, but still, what's the word I'm looking for? Make me feel good nonetheless. So yes.
Orgasm?
No, I meant like relaxing, because it's been a weird few weeks, bruh. Okay, it's been a weird few. I deserve.
Are you saying they don't get happy endings?
Oh no!
I don't
That's
know.
not
But
out.
Tom says lots of tomatoes in the chat. Please continue to send them. I love you all. You are such a blessing to have. And thank you. And yes, only women and bald men should vote. Per Tom, I concur. All right, back to you, gentlemen. I do pardon the interruption, but that was necessary.
So, almost 50% of the U.S. population doesn't pay a federal tax. Why should they get to vote on what the other 50% pays in federal tax? How's that fair?
Well,
You
they
mean federal
certainly
income
pay sales
tax, right?
tax. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I know, but I'm talking specifically about a federal tax, which is far higher for some folks.
Well, I mean, again, they're impacted by the policies that are funded by the government. Like, it's really that simple.
Well, I know, but that was the point of my analogy coming in, is that we can come up with a lot of situations where somebody is marginally affected just by sake of being in a place and having a more rudimentary part just by, well, yeah, I'm affected by the laws by living here. But when it comes to a more general overall view of what actually affects a person, what actually makes the movers and shakers and actually changes the outlook of the community, the infrastructure of the community, people that don't have any part of playing in that, how does their vote, how does that make society better for them to be able to have a say in something that they have no part in?
Well, I guess.
Are you assuming like the altruism of rich people?
What does that
like how are people who don't have the ability to change policy supposed to affect things like, say, if all of the rich people who are the only ones who have the vote have decided to enact policies that specifically lower your wages, lower your safety standards, and basically just squeeze every ounce of labor out of you with barely paying you a pittance, and you have no political ability to